I'm going to tell you this. There's so many people that should be behind bars that are not behind bars.
A nation where about 70% of people in correctional facilities are awaiting trial.
I can use my skill as a lawyer to be providing legal services, but I will be solving the symptoms. At the root cause is socio-economic inequity.
We will dive behind the scenes of what's going on within her mind.
For the kind of work that I do, I would not call myself an activist.
Really?
Yes.
And also being a woman in this space.
I remember the first time I spoke to an inmate. The inmate was telling me his story. At the time, I don't even know if he was telling me the truth, but I just found myself crying.
In America, prison is a business.
It's because our criminal justice system is dysfunctional. We want to see how we can build prison industries and then work with them, change their lives. So we just don't want to share, oh, we've released this person. No, this is how this person's life has changed over the course of the 1 to 3 years. For me, I think that's the real impact.
Hello guys, welcome to today's episode, and on today's episode I'll be having a very good friend of mine, excellent individual. I have been seeing her work from afar, and we had the privilege of meeting each other during the Mandela Washington Fellowship that we returned from in 2023. Hearing her story, Barrister Funke Adeoye, who is she's basically a lawyer, but I say a social justice advocate. And she has been able to help people through an organization called Hope Behind Bars. And she has helped over 8,000 people with justice-related issues. When I read that number, I was like, So, I love the work she's doing, because in this episode of Building from Africa, we are not just looking for people that are going to talk about building enterprise just for money. We're talking about purpose, we're talking about impact, we're talking about enterprise that has soul. So for a lawyer like this who finished exceptionally, she has been, I like to call her the award-winning lawyer. She has been recognized globally, and for her to choose this path, we'll dive behind the scenes of what's going on within her mind. How does she handle this reality? And also being a woman in this space. So it's really phenomenal, because I know what it can feel like to fight for justice in a country like Nigeria. And I look forward to diving into the conversations. Join us as we go ahead on this. And please subscribe, share, comment, let people know about this, let people hear about this, and let this story go all the way around the world. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Elijah.
Thank you very much, Funke, for making it. I'm very grateful that you made out time. I know that you have a lot of saving the world to do.
Oh my God.
So, no, it's the truth. I think you are doing something very exceptional, and I find that there are very few people that I've seen with that level of energy, and you still maintain a very calm face. You still maintain a very calm face, But I think before Hope Behind Bars, obviously there was always a Funke. Looking through your journey and diving through to childhood, were there particular things that led to where you are right now, and what experiences were those for you?
Okay, thank you. I'll start first by saying thank you for having me. You're also doing exceptional work, and I actually feel very privileged to be on this show with you today. So, my childhood, I would say, was predominantly uneventful.
Uneventful?
Uneventful. I'm going somewhere. Uneventful in the sense that I grew up in a regular middle class family. I'm the third of 6 children. I grew up in a Christian home, and so it was just us growing, going to school, going to church, and all of that. But then we had something that was quite eventful that changed the course of my life and the course of our family, and which also sort of relates to what I do today. So while I was a child, I think I was about 8 or thereabouts, I just noticed my dad wasn't home for about a couple of weeks. And the regular Nigerian family where nobody gives you full details on what is happening. You're just saying mom going and out. she would be unhappy. And we found out that my dad had been arrested and detained for a crime he did not commit. And he was in panty detention. It's in Lagos State.
Lagos.
Yeah, we're in Lagos at the time. So he spent a couple of weeks there. Basically, a theft had occurred at his place of work, and they just packed all the low level staff. So first off, he did not have any access. He didn't have an access to a lawyer. Eventually, they requested for bribe, and there was just this back and forth. And eventually, after a couple of weeks and a couple of interventions by a distant relative who is a lawyer, my dad got out. But when he got out, he lost his job. And at the time, he was the breadwinner of the family. My mom, was more like was just at home with us. So it affected us severely. I had to drop out of school. For a couple of years.
For a couple of
yeah,
years?
for a couple of years actually.
You dropped out of
No,
school?
I mean the hardship.
Okay,
We experienced the hardship for a couple of years, but I had to drop out of school for a whole year. And at the time, my dad would often just recount his experience behind bars and how the society sort of like favors the rich. We all know that.
Yeah.
And how he would have, if he would love to have a child who is a lawyer. My parents came from very lowly background, right? But somehow they were able to give us, the best, me and my sister. So I found myself studying law.
You found yourself studying
Yeah.
law? Or did you?
Yes.
Or did that event inform you studying law?
I at the point in which I went to study law, because this was about 8 years after. It was because I went to art class, and I felt like, it's a professional course, let me study law. The issue with my dad did not come up until in my final year at the university. So you know how we write our project, our thesis, and I was just thinking, what should I write on? And I knew that for some reason I'm very drawn to criminal law. I'm very drawn to criminal-related issues. And so I said, you know what? I want to do something on the awaiting trial syndrome. So I wrote my thesis on restorative justice as a tool for prison reforms in Nigeria.
Restorative justice?
Yeah, this was in 2012. So it was that period when I was writing my research work that I remembered what happened to my dad. And, he had become one of the statistics of people who have no business being in prison or who have no business being behind bars and who eventually find themselves behind bars. So when I did the thesis, I saw more statistics. I saw that the number of awaiting trial inmates in Nigeria had increased. I saw that the criminal justice system is predominantly unfavorable to the poor. So the following year, I went to law school and I began to volunteer at the law school clinic. I would go to Suleja Correctional Facility, speak to inmates. And it's funny, Elijah, I remember the first time I spoke to an inmate. The inmate was telling me his story. At the time, I don't even know if he was telling me the truth, but I just found myself crying. Yeah, I found myself crying. I'm like, why am I crying? Because, most times when you talk to inmates, they would always tell you, I didn't commit the offense. It took me time to understand how to separate my emotions from my work. But I know the first time I spoke to her, I was crying. And then there were other law students around, and they were like stone-faced. When we got out of Suleja prison at the time, I realized that I just had, there was just something. Everybody felt like, oh, we've gone to do a regular thing. But for me, it wasn't regular. And then, so when I became a lawyer, I began to practice in the office of an SAN. And again, I found that I was very drawn to criminal cases. I worked in a firm that handled a lot of cases, maritime cases. My boss was one of the strong maritime lawyers in Nigeria. Maritime cases, aviation, a whole lot of cases, good work. But every time there's a criminal case, I was just drawn to it. So there was this pro bono case we took up. It was a sensational case at the time. A couple of policemen had been killed, and it was said that they were killed by militants. But then 20 men were picked up, and women, there were a couple of women among them. And I went to Ikoyi prison, Ikoyi correctional facility at the time, to interview them. And then we found out that, first of all, these guys were all arrested and charged for murder, pipeline vandalization, and conspiracy. But a couple of them did not even know each other. Some of them met themselves. Yeah, they basically, long and short, they basically met themselves in custody. And then, this is where it gets worse. So we were talking to about 14 of them. And in the course of the conversation, we realized that 15 of them had actually been arrested. And then one day they took out one of them, and they said, you know what, this is going to be the scapegoat. So they shot him, extrajudicially shot him, and told the rest of them that if you don't confess, that's what will happen to you.
Shot him dead?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. long and short, my clients, at the time before we came into the picture, they confessed. I mean, they agreed that they had committed the crime,
Even if they hadn't.
They hadn't. They hadn't. I mean, it was in the news that the people who did the acts were militants. But at the time, they couldn't get the militants. And so they just picked these guys. In fact, one of them had come for a wedding. I remember very well. He came for his brother's wedding. It was picked up in the night. His brother's wedding was the next day. So those were all the evidence that we presented before the court. So this was the first time as a lawyer, come close to something like this. I wasn't the sole lawyer. I was working with one of the senior lawyers at the firm. And we gave it our best shot. And we won the case at the Federal High Court. Yeah, at the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal. That was about 2017. And then I moved to Abuja. I got married and moved to Abuja. And so when I moved to Abuja, I knew that I didn't want to practice law like every other person. I felt like I had seen too much. I can tell you that someone was shot extrajudicially, and you might not be able to process it, but I related with his pals. I related with people that knew that one of them was shot. So I felt like it wasn't normal. And also to say that before I left Lagos, I began to work with my church's prison unit. Okay. And I think they did some phenomenal work. I was able to do certain things. But then coming back to Abuja, I said to myself, you know what, I want to do this on a full scale. So I began to, I would say I'm an accidental social entrepreneur. I like to call myself a social entrepreneur, and I will explain why.
Why possibly not an activist?
Yeah, I'm very scared. So I have my reservations on the word activist. For the kind of work that I do, I would not call myself an activist.
Really?
Yes. Activism might be one of the components of what I do, but I would see myself more as a social entrepreneur, because I found out along the line that one of the major reasons behind the problem I am addressing is socio-economic. And so I can use my skill as a lawyer to be providing legal services, but I would be solving the symptoms. At the root cause is socioeconomic inequity.
How do you mean?
Let me use the example of the guys that I said we picked up. They were children of nobodies.
Okay.
If they had somebody, they would not be behind bars. So I believe that even though on the surface, right now, we do a lot of legal aid, a lot of legal representation activism. Behind addressing the root cause of my work would be addressing the socioeconomic indices, the things that actually make people, the things that actually take people into incarceration. So it's two things. The kind of people we support are two. We support people who don't have any business behind bars. And then we also support people who find themselves behind bars because they are from a very low socioeconomic background. So there's a part of my work that goes to supporting the correctional service. And
really?
Yes, and equipping, people with skills that they would use to fish, not just giving them fish.
Oh, so it goes beyond just
absolutely
legal representation.
It goes beyond legal representation. And I also like to think that as an activist in some way, I would be at the mercy of aid. Yeah. And I have my reservations about aid, even though to an extent, I'm still stuck with receiving aid right now. But I think that I can come up with solutions, innovations that would make my work extremely sustainable, that would support the people that I work for, and also predominantly help the nation become, a better one. So that's why I prefer to see myself as a social entrepreneur. So it's me calling those things that be not as though they were.
Well, yeah, because I think from my understanding, I kind of understand what you mean by solving social economic issues, because there is something I believe that there are certain fields that exist because certain fields have existed. So, for example, my industry in the creative space, the only reason that we are strong is because there's something called intellectual property law. So that's really what gives value to whatever music or whatever film. So I like to say we are the downstream of a strong legal system, because the stronger the legal system, the more people will actually be able to get their money's worth for their creativity. So I see how that also affects the social economic structure of society, because if there is inequity, automatically there can't be growth, and people can't really achieve
Absolutely.
move to the greatest heights of their greatest potentials.
Absolutely.
And I think even looking at the entrepreneurship parts, one of the things that I always ask myself is, unlike in America, prison is a business.
So that's another angle. Yeah, I mean, that's the other face of our work right now.
Okay.
Because again, like I said, we would continue doing this and we will not be able to control the number of people that go behind bars.
Sure. I mean, but we have a historically low number of people.
Absolutely.
Right now
I mean, compared to the US,
Are
we
we
are
that
doing
holy?
better.
Are we that holy?
No, it's because our criminal justice system is dysfunctional.
Okay.
Actually, I would tell you that there are so many people that should be behind bars that are not behind bars. And so when you look at even the socio-economic cost and the security cost, it doesn't work well for us because we're spending so much money feeding people that have no business being in prison. Why 30%, only 30% of people you find in prison are convicted. So,
Really?
yeah, 70% of the people you find behind bars are awaiting trial. They have no business being there.
Wow, this reminds me of a certain documentary I once saw of America. I don't know if you watched it. There's this black guy. He did a study around prisons and black people getting into prison.
Oh, yeah.
forgotten the
I
name.
was in the US earlier this year and I told myself, like, I mean, there's a lot of things we want to get better in Nigeria, but there are some things that we're not doing badly. The US has a crazy mass incarceration problem, and it is closely linked to racism because you find that it's mostly blacks and Hispanics, that find themselves in the prison system, and so it comes from that slavery thing. Now there's a prison industry that feeds into the economy of the US, but people are actually not being paid for the labor that they give. Like, I mean, the prisoners, they're not being paid. So they have all of these problems. So when you look at the kind of crimes that gets them there, low risk drug usage, and they have this thing called the school to prison pipeline, where once you are in school, like secondary school, you commit like a deviant behavior, somewhere you can find yourself in the prison system. We don't have that here. So it's just like the system is predominantly against the blacks. And I mean, there's a lot of advocacy around mass incarceration.
But do you think we should be looking at, getting these able-bodied men in prisons to be working?
Exactly. In Nigeria.
Because I think we just waste that labor.
Yes. I mean, that's something I'm looking to see how we can develop in Nigeria, because what we have here is a lot of money is being spent on feeding them, and they come out and it's almost like they've not added any value to themselves.
I mean, someone literally said that with the level of poverty in the country, that I'd rather go to prison, at least I go see food chop.
I've had, so this is interesting.
I mean, I'm not necessarily saying the food there is decent.
It's decent. I mean, some of the...
So what is it?
So we once had a client, I mean, he didn't eventually become a client, who told us he's better off in prison in Nigeria here. But then it's a particular prison. So I always tell people that I don't work in Kuje Correctional Center. Kuje is the one in Abuja here.
Why?
Where most of the politicians, like government officials who eventually, get convicted, find themselves there. So it's like a model correctional center. I always tell myself, if the government can do what they're doing in Kuje, just replicate it across the regions in Nigeria, we'll be better off. Kuje Correctional Center has solar system. They have people go to school. Like, it's state of the art. And so one time we met someone there, and he told us that he's currently in Open University. And he would not have this opportunity if he's outside. He's eating. He's watching football match for free. He won't have that outside. So he told us to just leave him alone. No.
So, I mean, coming back to Hope Behind Bars, how did the journey begin? Like, starting Hope Behind Bars, and what was that moment? I understand that you worked at is it Global?
Global Rights.
Global Rights, and then coming to Hope Behind Bars. What was that transition like?
Okay, so I actually worked at Global Rights for a year after starting Hope Behind Bars Africa.
After?
Yeah, and I'm going to explain why that was necessary. One of the best decisions I made, actually. I had said earlier that I find myself to be an accidental social entrepreneur. The plan was never really to start my own organization. Before I started Hope Behind Bars, I had tried just volunteering or interning in a couple of organizations, and it just didn't work out. And then in 2020, I had a personal experience with one of the systems in the government systems. I lost a child to the health system. That was March 2018. I mean, the way to get out of the grief and everything was to go back to my faith, which is my foundation.
Yeah.
And in going back to my faith, I found out that, you know what, you can't, I was contemplating suing the government, but I didn't even have the money to sue the government or anything. So I needed to pour my grief somewhere. And so 2 months after, I started Hope Behind Bars by just going to, speak to inmates and then just representing them. And that turned out well. I got people, volunteers to join me and all of that. But 3 years down the line, I realized that I had the skills, I had the legal skills. I had sufficient number of people around me. I had a vision, I had purpose and everything. But the wherewithal to lead a non-profit in Nigeria, I did not have it. And that was why I had to take a break. The work was ongoing in Edo and a couple of states where we work, but I said, you know what? I want to go work in an established non-profit organization and then just learn the ropes. The plan was to actually take enough time and spend some time there. So I got the offer to become program manager at Global Rights. It's an international human rights organization. Yeah. And it's interesting to see that I did not have any experience working in a non-profit before then, apart from the experience with my organization. So I went there. I spent a year. The plan was to spend longer, but I just spent a year. And it was instrumental. It was instrumental in just helping me understand the ropes around program management, fundraising, and all the things I needed to learn. And so 1 year after, I got back to Hope Behind Bars. And I think it's been quite...
How many years now?
5 years this year.
Wow.
Yes, 5 years this year.
Phenomenal. 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I work hot across, all the regions in Nigeria currently.
Really?
Yes. We have an office in Edo State with staff. And then we are also able to represent people across about 9 states now.
I think boys headquartered in Abuja.
Yes, headquartered in Abuja, an office space in Edo State, but I work hot across
Are you also registered in the US?
We're planning to do that before the end of next year.
So, from starting Hope Behind Bars, how were you able to break through, what was your breakthrough moment, really? Because at the end of the day, you raise funding now, right?
Yeah.
So how did you able to create something that was growing beyond just, because also, let me just be, some of the questions that maybe the viewers might be wondering is, a lot of people start non-profits, and it has almost become a form of scam now in our society. People just do things without a purpose, But I've really seen yours to be authentic. I've seen yours grow. I don't know if it's from the global rights experience that helped you, because a lot of people that just start, they just get passionate and they just start something out. What are some things that you've been able to professionally put in place that has helped you stabilize such a venture, and how have you been able to balance the aid versus the income?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to answer that question first by saying there are a couple of things I didn't know when I started. I was bootstrapping. I think I bootstrapped Hope Behind Bars for 3 years. And when I say I bootstrapped, it wasn't like my boot was quite big. It wasn't like it was quite large. I was lucky to have the gift of men. Okay. Because predominantly my work at the time involved a lot of manpower in terms of people giving their legal skills. And I had people reach out to me from all nooks and crannies saying they want to volunteer for Hope Behind Bars, and they were not asking for a dime. So that was how we were able to push out the initial phase of the work. But another thing, why was I bootstrapping? I felt that I didn't want to build a regular nonprofit that would just start and immediately we're trying to raise funds. I felt we needed to put certain structures in place before we start raising funds, because my name is very important to me. I don't want to raise funds and then it looks like, oh, what did you use our money for? And the kind of things that we find in the space. So I'm going to tell you this. I actually did not start fundraising until last year.
Wow.
I did not deliberately start looking out for funds until last year, and that was the 4th year. Because I felt like certain structures must be in place. We must have a working board, a good governor, a working, board of trustees. We must have the company, the nonprofit registered. It was registered a year after. We must have certain policies and just systems and structures in place because I'm building to last. I mean, I look forward to some time in the nearest future where I'll be able to move away from hope behind bars, and I would be, looking back and the organization continues,
Kind of like what you saw in
Ex-
global rights.
Exactly. I mean, I had all of those thoughts before I went to global rights. And then coming out, it was after I came out of global rights that I started building and just putting all of these structures in place. And I would say one of the defining moments for us was sometime last year when we, got one of our first major awards, or would I call it grants, $25,000 in India. We went to India for a competition, and that might not look like a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but it was a lot for us because we're coming from a place where we were not even paying ourselves.
all, yeah.
Yeah, we were not paying. We were just taking stipends and all of that. I mean, the team that was working with me. So it was huge for us. But I think another phenomenal thing that also changed the game for us is, interestingly, media. I think we're able to learn the ropes on how to
Tell your story.
tell our story. And we're still learning the ropes. Yeah, we're still learning the ropes. I realized that even though I did not go out to intentionally fundraise or try to get funds, because we're always out there, putting ourselves out there, people reached out to us and we got some form of support. But the next 5 years, it's 5 years this year. Yeah, a whole lot has happened in the past 5 years. But
in this journey so far, what has been like? So, what are some turning points, moments that have really redefined your perspective towards justice and advocacy?
Okay. Now, so I would say one of the turning point moments for me has been.
Is there any particular case?
Yeah, that's what there's a particular case which I handled that case. This young man had been in prison for 5 years, no lawyer, nothing. And I just needed to represent him. Awaiting trial. Yeah, he was picked up by SARS, the popular SARS at the time. He spent about 6 months in SARS custody before spending about 5 years in Kuje prison. So I met him. And Elijah, it only took me one appearance to get him out.
Wow.
Yes. It was a case. I told myself, you know what? Even if we don't get anything, all I needed to do was to appear in court once. It was as though the judge had been waiting for somebody. And there's a law, Section 351 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that says where the prosecution or the complainant, the nominal complainant, is not responsive in some way, you can ask the court to strike out the matter. So all I told the court was, this guy has been coming to court for 2 years straight up. The prosecution has not appeared once. So he has no business being here. It was a risk because usually that law is not used for capital cases. He was charged for a capital case. He was charged for armed robbery, which he did not commit. And the judge, I remember the judge was livid when he was giving his ruling. He was livid. He sent words to the Ministry of Justice, sent words to the prosecutor, and he discharged. Elijah, everybody was shocked because this is me announcing appearance for the first time and getting this guy out. But that's not even where the story ends. Now, this case happened in 2019. That guy is currently like an ambassador for our organization now. Because guess what? Despite everything he went through, false accusation and all of that, he turned his life around. He's married. He has a child. We've worked with him. We actually worked to reintegrate him, assisted him in getting jobs and all of that. So it's really a phenomenal case for me, and it's the next phase of our work. In the next 5 years, we're not just working with getting people out of prison. We want to change their life. We want to call at least 100 people. I said we've helped 8,000. We want to call half of that number in the next 5 years. And they're telling us, I'm managing this big farm in Kaduna. I have this business, We want to transform people's life. And I think that's really the purpose here. And we're not going to do that alone. We're going to work with the government. We currently have conversations with the government. We're going to work deliberately with the government to get this to happen. Going back to the discussion around the socio-economic indices, currently we have a lot of insecurity issues. Yeah. I think that if we can focus a lot more on helping people fish instead of giving people fish, I think it's going to change things.
Yeah, the humanitarian approach currently has been cash transfer.
No, you need to give people skills. These are human beings that actually have plans for their lives, right? So we want to see how we can build prison industries and then work with them, change their lives. So we just don't want to share, oh, we've released this person. No, this is how this person has changed, lives has changed over the course of the 1 to 3 years. For me, I think that's the real impact
So it's
in my
even
work.
beyond just the people that were released, even people within the system.
Yeah, even people that committed crimes within the system, because that's when the work is truly correctional. They changed the name of prison now from prison to corrections. Well,
Really?
it's just, yeah, they did. I mean, there's an act to that effect. So they changed the name from prisons to corrections in 2019. But it's not corrections if it's not really correcting
So, but
people.
what's restorative justice?
One of my favorites. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I
Yeah,
mean, I
because
don't.
I came across that word. Interestingly, I have a penchant for law.
Ah,
Yeah, so I think I should have been a lawyer.
it's not too late.
It's late.
You can join a second course or something.
What will I do? How will I get into school?
I mean, you're a star, so just write to them and tell them I need to.
Come on, guys, just let me into law school.
Yeah.
But I think it was So I watch a lot of legal drama. It makes me feel like I'm living that life, which is a lie. But, but it makes me feel. I think. So I came across that term in one of the episodes. So that's how I know some of these statements.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to understand because it was from what I saw and when I researched after that was more like a new approach towards correction.
Corrections,
So
yeah.
can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, actually, because I'm talking about my work because I'm passionate about my work. So people out there would not understand. And they're like, these people are criminals. They should rot in jail. That's where restorative justice comes in. Restorative justice says justice is a three-way street. It's justice for the state, it's justice for the accused, and it's justice for the victim of the crime. So basically, somebody comes to the office and boggles the office. And usually the approach of the state is two-way. The person has to be charged, arrested, and then punished. So it's justice for just the state and the person. Justice for the criminal, for the person who's charged, is that he goes to jail. And then for the state is that, we have one less criminal in the streets as streets are more secure. But with restorative justice, we are saying that in addition to whatever punitive, whatever sanction you want to give this person, let the person understand the weight of the crime he has committed. So in restorative justice, we often have victim offender mediation, where, I don't know if you want that, but we bring the person who's accused of the crime here, you're here, and Elijah tells him, this thing you did to me, this is how it hurt me, this is who was affected, this is, just explain. And he or she is supposed to sincerely feel remorse and say, I am currently serving my time, but you know what? I am really sorry. I did this because of this and this and this. It's not an excuse, but I thought to come and tell you that I deeply am sorry. That's restorative justice.
Yeah, I think that was actually what happened in the episode.
Yeah.
It was very unorthodox.
Very unorthodox, yeah.
But I think eventually they were able to resolve. But
you can't use that for every kind of case. If somebody kills, if someone kidnaps or murders, you don't expect the person to, there's still the trauma and all of that. But it's just a way of thinking of justice outside of the retributive justice system. Retributive says just punish, but restorative says also try to repair the harm that has been done by the crime, restore the relationship if it is possible.
I think something really broke my heart recently. I saw two young guys who were, I think they were extradited from Nigeria to the US because they committed an online sexual harassment crime. So basically, they reached out to a white guy, got him to pretend they were a woman, got him to send naked pictures.
I think I saw that.
He got them to send some money, and eventually, when the guy couldn't send all the money they were asking for, the guy said, he was out of the shame and the pursuit and everything, he killed himself. So
wow.
Yeah, so the guy killed himself in the US. So the US government came, and these were like 21, 20-year-old boys who I'm sure were just experimenting with life and trying to see this thing. But eventually they were taken and they were arrested and put in prison over there. So it really broke my heart because I'm like, and eventually when I even found out how much they were asking for, it was just $1,000 or something.
Oh my God.
So I was like, just $1,000 and these guys are out for life.
Yeah.
Their lives have been
cut short.
Is that really the finality? How do you balance such perspectives. You know, I think it's something that bothers me right now because of the number of young people that we have in the system. And even if the system gets better, how do we get them to be productive contributors, you know, to society? And instead of just saying, oh, this one are ex-convict.
Yeah, that
You know, drop am one side.
stigmatization.
That's
Yeah.
stigmatization.
Yeah.
Has a large word in my mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but how are you seeing the acceptance of people with a history, you know,
Yeah.
back to society in
Yeah.
Nigeria?
I mean, there's a lot of stigma. We work with them. There's a lot of stigma, but we oftentimes try to see what we can do to shaping the narrative, to let people know that first off, it's not everyone that goes to prison that is a criminal. And then there's a lot of conversation around community corrections now, which is basically that the work of corrections is not just for the correctional officers, it's every one of us. Because there's something called recidivism. If the community doesn't accept them, they would find themselves, maybe there are no jobs, there's nobody, they could find themselves committing crimes and then going back to the prison, and then it's a circle. So I would say that we have a lot of challenges in Nigeria. So I want to also understand from the place of people. Like, for instance, when we go to meet people and say, okay, employ this person, he just got out of prison, which is why we're trying to see how to upskill them while they are there so that when they come out, I mean, they are already disadvantaged. They are already disadvantaged, but let's try and upskill them, work on them, behavioral change therapy and all of that, and see how when they come out, to an extent, they might be able to compete. But in terms of the stigmatization, it's there. I don't know if there is anything we can really do about it right now, other than say, working with religious bodies. So that works
That's a
like
way, yeah.
more the churches, mosques, and all of that. They have that restorative thing, like, okay, come, everybody come
Everybody's
into
accepted.
everybody's accepted kind of vibe. Yeah. So those are the people that we often work with to say this person just got out, help the person. But in terms of community corrections, that's a new thinking, a new conversation that's been coming up globally that we're trying to just project out there that this person has to be welcomed in some way.
Are there any unpopular opinions or contrarian opinions that you currently hold about the legal aid and activism and human rights advocacy in
Okay.
Nigeria that you feel people should understand? In terms of like that you think will drive positive change? Are there certain changes?
I mean, I want the government to
think-
stand up to the work. So that's another reason why I wouldn't want to call myself an activist. The work I'm doing is supposed to be done by the government. The legal aid. We have legal aid
Yeah,
council.
I think we do have something like that. Yeah, legal aid council.
Yeah, we have legal aid council. Like, when you have conversations with them, they often tell you they are not funded or there's no fund and all of that. I don't have fund either. But I mean, I just, and no, the lawyers that work with me, do you understand? I want the government to step up to, their mandates. We need to see a political will that they really want to change the system. For me, that's going to be a game changer. The political will.
But I mean, coming back to the role that you play, like the role of the government, right? And I'm sure you find a lot of oppositions. I'm sure you find a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
How have you been able to navigate being a woman in a Nigerian kind of setup, doing the kind of work that you do? Are there some challenges you faced?
Okay.
And are there some things that are currently limiting you from pushing
Okay.
towards the fullness of your
Of our work. I would say
But I think your work is high intensity.
yeah, it's high intensity. But in the past 5 years, we've learned to choose our battles.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can remember there are a couple of times that we saw certain things. Okay, let me give a very frank example. One time, something happened in a particular correctional facility. It was in the news.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into details. It was really bad.
Yeah.
What was in the news wasn't the real thing.
Okay.
We got insight into what the real thing was. We got footage, and there was a lot of noise around it. And I spoke to my board, and I'm like, this is what we just saw. Someone just sent us the real footage of what happened in this correctional facility. And they were like, okay, what do you want to do? I said, I want to pick my battle. So what did I do? I just reached out to one of the top international human rights organizations in Nigeria. And I sent everything I had to them, let them follow up on it. Why? Because they have funding for security, they have funding for We don't have. So if Hope Behind Bars Africa at the time, this was 2020. I mean, I've mentioned the year now, so you might know what I'm talking about. Because this thing, I mean, it was in the news. It went to the legislative house. After the real footage was put out, and one of these media agency picked it up. We also spoke to the media agency. The government had to recount their story and say what really happened. So I would say that, with respect to that, have I gotten pushbacks? I won't be able to say yes or no. I would say that I've just learned to pick my battles. I don't like to fight what I would not be able to sustain, like in the long run. Maybe that's why I wouldn't call myself an activist. Because I mean, I have kids, I have a family, and nobody is paying me for this job. I just want to help people. So I try to pick my battles, err on the side of just helping people. And right now, we're doing a lot of engagement with the government. And I must say that we enjoy a very good relationship with the correctional service. They are amazing. They open our doors to us. In the realm of the criminal justice system, they open our doors to us. I would say the police hasn't been quite easy. With respect to the judiciary, recently we joined an alliance, the Open Justice Alliance. Again, it's me or it's us learning to pick our battles. We want to speak up or push back against some of the judgments that are coming from the gubernatorial elections, coming from the judiciary. I mean, you're in Nigeria and you know what's been happening recently. But we can't do it alone. We don't want Hope Behind Bars Africa to be at the forefront. So we joined the Justice Alliance. So when you come, you're not coming for HBBA, you're coming for the alliance, and you might not even know everyone that belongs to the alliance. So, I mean, that's how we've been able to withstand that. Now, as a woman, quite an interesting question, because usually in my field, I don't like to, I mean...
There are no gender issues there.
I mean, there are gender issues, but again, I like to just do my work. Yeah, I think I would leave it at that. I like to just do my work.
You don't get distracted.
Yeah, I mean, there are distractions here and there. I mean, there are times that because of the engagement with the government, you have to have late night meetings and all of that, and again, I'm a family, I have a family. I think also it's just understanding how to bring in my support system. So my husband he's not a lawyer and he doesn't understand half of what we do. In fact, he tells me that every time he comes to our event, he's like, you are just talking. Like he just sees us talking, right? But I think for me, it's that I have a very strong support system. And so when I have to make certain decisions or, all the late night meetings and all of that has to come, he understands that, his wife has to do her job. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what would you like to be your legacy? I know, yes, you are just 5 years, but what's the big picture? Would you like to be remembered for, like, in terms of your contributions to justice and human rights advocacy?
Okay. In terms of just criminal justice reforms, because that's really where I want to write my name on the sands of time, that we have a criminal justice system that is truly responsive to the needs of the people. Everybody involved. So the needs of the state, the needs of the victims of the crime, the needs of the people who have or who have not committed the crime. And so our vision really is to co-create change in the criminal justice system in Africa. Co-create because, I mean, my work is not like education or some other work. I can't do it alone. I have to do it with the government. Yes, so I'm looking at long-term system change. And long-term system change would not just be at the point of corrections. It will be at the point of the police, because that's the entry system into, all of the issues that we have. So like issues of the NSAS and all of that, that's where it's starting from. So I want to look back and then say that all the major things that change the way criminal justice is being done, in Nigeria, and not just in Nigeria, it's Hope Behind Bars Africa. So we're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, that we were part of that change. Yes, and so for me, it's system change, looking at the system as it is, but also individual change. Because, I mean, the Holy Book talks about, the father leaving 99 to go after one. Yeah. So even though in the long run for me, system change is very, very important. I mean, that's what's going to create a ripple effect. That one person whose life is transformed by my work makes all the difference too.
So you get there one step at a time.
Yes.
But I think you've been recently, I think you're doing an excellent job. You've recently celebrated You got the Wildsit Pride. Was it Wildit's? Wildit's
Global
Pride,
citizen.
Global citizen. I mean, recently also, I think you're currently in Oxford doing
I got a Commonwealth scholarship.
Commonwealth scholarship. I mean, you're doing very
Thank you.
excellent, right? So how do you create time to balance all these things? Are you also a family woman? Do you have any routines that you use to keep yourself sane?
That's $1 million question, because I mean, we're still trying to find the balance. But I think one of the things that comes to mind when I think of that question is what Michelle Obama said in her book Becoming, where she said, as a woman, you can have it all, but not at once. I think that's one of the most liberating statements for me. Understanding that at first I used to like the vibe when people call me superwoman. But later I'm like, no, I don't want to be so. I want to have a soft life. As in, I want to kill my goals, but then I want to do it on a soft pedal. I want to do it looking peng and, all of that thing. So how have I been able to work around that? Again, I have a very strong support system. So support system now, not just my husband, house help, sisters, mother. I mean, I had to travel out of the country for about 7 weeks earlier this year. How did I navigate that with my kids?
I mean, you have a 5 and a
I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. I had to bring my mom in. I mean, everybody has to be part of the work. And that's the thing about the work that we do, right? You can't do it alone. So my sister, everybody, even my staff, just incorporating this into understanding that it's a very demanding terrain, and I also need to be sane. I was telling you earlier that I had to actually go off social media at a point. This is something I do often, actually. I do that often. Just take some time off, away from the noise, and just focus. And then finally, I would say my faith. It's really, really strong, that place of just dwelling and just going into intimacy with God and just receiving strength. For me, it's also been a game changer.
Yeah. Okay, so I have some quick questions for you.
Okay.
Totally unrelated to justice.
Okay.
Well, kind of related. If you had a magic wand,
wow,
and you could only change one thing.
Oh my God.
In Nigeria, what would that be?
Oh my God, what would that be? We need power. Hey. Power. 24/7 power. Yeah.
Okay, the second question is, would you rather be the inventor of the internet or social media?
That everybody is cursing. Everybody is cursing the inventor of people curse what's his name? Mark.
For what?
Every other day, yeah. I mean, the other day, there's this thing he rolled out on WhatsApp, the channel, and I saw it and I was like, what's happening here? Then I went to Quora and people were insulting him. No, I don't think I want to be an inventor of social media.
You rather invent the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the third question here is never sleep and always be productive, or never face burnout.
Never face burnout.
Never face burnout.
Yeah.
Okay, that seemed very simple for you, because you're like, so you rather never face burnout, but you just be average.
Oh no! I didn't get the question. Sorry, take that question again.
Never sleep.
I don't sleep currently, so
Okay.
it's not like I sleep.
It's
So
like I'm telling you,
I didn't get the question. Sorry. No, I can't be average. See, even if I'm not doing the work I'm doing, wherever else I am, I just can't be average.
Really?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it's the life that we've chosen. I can't be average.
Okay, so I think the final question is a perfect idea or a perfect team?
A perfect team. And wait. Jesus. A perfect team makes all the difference, because with a perfect team, you can come up with a perfect idea.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I actually typically agree that I believe that if you carry a mediocre idea and you give it to a great team,
they will
eventually
finesse
make
it.
a phenomenal idea.
Yeah.
But if you give a great idea to
a mediocre team.
they'll bring it down
Oh, yeah,
to their
absolutely.
level. So
Absolutely.
I think I agree with you on that one.
Absolutely. I love those questions, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You can check us out on our website, www.hopebehindbars.africa.org. And then we're very active on social media. Twitter and Instagram is at Hope Behind Bar. And then Facebook and LinkedIn is Hope Behind Bars Africa. So you would see like donation links and all of that. And there are other ways you can join us. You can adopt an inmate. You can
really?
volunteer with us. There are several ways. You will find that on our handles. And you can also follow me on THE Funke Adeoye on Instagram.
The celebrity. All right. So thank you very much, Funke. We're very
Thank you.
grateful
Thank you for
thank you
having
for
me.
making it.
Yes, I had a good time.
I
It
really
was good
did
to,
too.
yeah.
I really did too. I never knew I would enjoy this
I
conversation
thought it was
so
going to be
much.
boring legal stuff, but I mean, you're a very good show person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really. Thank you very much. I'm flattered. I'm flattered. It's my first time at this. Oh, I'm
Okay.
shy. All right. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us on this conversation. Please like, share, comment, let people know about this conversation and what they could learn from it. And also feel free to also follow our guest today, Hope Behind Bars Africa, and support the work that they're doing to actually give us a better nation. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Have a wonderful one.